If you suffer from anxiety, then you probably have friends, families, articles on the internet giving you all kinds of tips. Jog, meditate, take deep breaths. But we all know that there is no one single trick that can help you get a hold of this gnarly beast of anxiety. You need a framework. And today, I'm going to tell you about a framework that has worked for billions of people over 2,500 years in helping them come to terms with their anxiety. If it has worked for me, it will work for you. Believe me, I am what you call an anxiety connoisseur. I have dabbled in all different kinds of anxiety. But then a friend told me about Vipassana and the Buddha's Eightfold Path. What I like about this framework is that it can be customized to suit your own individual needs. So without further ado, let's get to the first step. The first step is what the Buddha calls having the right view. We have aging parents, aging pets, or we see friends and family succumb to all kinds of illness, and we know that this can very easily happen to us. But instead of dealing with this impermanence, what do? We fill our heads with other thoughts so we don't have to think about this impermanence. We wonder, oh, why was my boss so rude to me? Or why did my colleague say that in the meeting? Or will that person ever call me again? These are all worries we fill our heads with just so we can stop thinking about the fact that we are not like street lamps that light up the pavement at night. We are like firecrackers. We are destined to light up the sky for the briefest of dazzling luminous seconds, and then we are gone. So the Buddha says the first thing is to deal with this notion of impermanence that you're trying to suppress in your conscious and unconscious. And speaking of unconscious, he asks us to square up to our unconscious thoughts, which brings me to step 2. So the step 2 is what the Buddha calls right motivation. I've published 2 novels, but I want to publish a banger, And I thought I was on a good run. But then one day we had kids, and for the last 9 years I haven't had the time to write a book. So I love my children more than anything in the world. But do I also feel a sense of resentment that this child rearing is taking away from my writing time? Sure it is. But the Buddha says, come to terms with all your feelings, positive or negative. Don't suppress them in the unconscious, because then they roll into anxiety. And he asks us to have the right intention and be accepting of our unconscious thoughts. But thoughts go only so far. How do we communicate with each other and with ourselves? We use words, which brings us to the third part in the Eightfold Path. This brings us to right speech. Now, when the Buddha came up with right speech, he used it to mean, hey, don't gossip or don't use bad words. But today what I want to focus on is the way you talk to yourself. We are very harsh when we talk to ourselves. Oh, you'll never lose weight. Oh, you screwed up today. Oh, you didn't get this done today. And the Buddha says, hey, just be a little kind and gentle in the way you talk to yourself. And this doesn't mean saying, I'm the best. When you say, I'm the best, I deserve everything, you consciously start to think of yourself as a person who can do all kinds of things. And this sets you up for failure, because there's no human being who can do everything. And then this causes that loop of anxiety. Maybe it's good just to have right speech where you tell yourself, hey, you know what? I'm not the best, and I'm okay with not being the best. And this can cause a great reduction in anxiety. But words are only one way we show up in the world. We also show up in the way we act with ourselves and with other people. Which brings us to the next step, right action. So let me tell you a great story that illustrates right action. So there are these 2 monks, and they're walking along the countryside, and then they come to a lake, and there's a woman on one side of the lake, and she's like, I need help getting ferried across. And one of the monks just lifts up the woman, and he helps her across. Then he drops her, and he says, bye-bye. And then they continue walking on. And after some time, his friend asks him, hey, what's up? Why are you fretting and frowning? And this guy says, hey, I really resent the way you picked up that woman. We are not supposed to be in physical touch with members of the opposite sex. And the man says, well, I picked up the woman, but I dropped her a long time ago. It looks like you are still holding on to her. This is what right action is. We are not dogmatic. We don't follow like a prescribed path or book or something. We just show up in the world and we respond to each moment. So just be more flexible in your approach. So that's what right action is, responding to every moment in the proper way. We act out most of our lives at work. And this brings me to the next step, which is right livelihood. Now, the Buddha, when he came up with right livelihood, said, hey, don't kill other people and don't steal and stuff like that. And I'm down with that. But what I'd like to focus on in a modern context is right livelihood means don't act in a way that runs counter to your personality. So when I was at Amazon, I used to, manage a large team of people. And this management role came with more money, came with more responsibility, came with a bigger title. But then, I can barely control my own anxieties. And now I'm responsible for the anxieties and aspirations of 15 to 20 other people. And this was causing a lot of strain on me. So I just decided, hey, you know what? Forget the extra money, forget the title, and I'll just become an individual contributor where I write for others. The only thing I can worry about now is, am I doing a good enough job in writing the best possible piece for my boss? And this has greatly contributed to lowering my anxiety. So that's what right livelihood is. Be conscious in your choice of career and be conscious in what you do for your living in a way so it doesn't cut against the grain of your personality. So now we've dealt with being conscious of our impermanence, of using the right words, of acting in a good way. And so now we've understood the why of why all these things are important. But now you have to translate these noble aspirations into action, and we get to the how, which deal with the last 3 steps. So the next step is right effort. This step says, shut the up. Well, not in so many words, but don't let your ego dominate the conversation. So when you enter a conversation, don't think about what you're going to say. Instead, just ask someone a question. Hey, how's your day going? Or, hey, where did you buy that sweater? Tell me more about it. And for networking for a job, instead of pitching your credentials, just say, I just read about what you were doing. It sounds amazing. How can I help? This need to dominate is a big source of anxiety because you're always worried about, am I going to get my own way? Is this going to pan out in a way that I can control? But right effort just means quietening your ego, listening actively to the voices of other people, and just being aware of everything and everyone around you. Which brings us beautifully to the next step, which is one of my favorite steps, which is right mindfulness. Now, right mindfulness just means being aware of things that happen around you without attaching a story to them. So, for example, I used to wake up in the morning, I used to get these pings of emails. And with each ping, my mind used to form a story. Oh, is that my boss being upset with me? Oh, is that a deadline I missed? Oh, does someone in another region need something from me? But right mindfulness means just be aware of everything that's coming into your world without reacting positively or negatively to it. And right mindfulness has been shown to have amazing effects. They did this study once where they took 2 groups of people that were dealing with anxiety disorders. One, they gave an anxiety medicine, and the other, they gave mindfulness training. Both groups reported a 30% drop in anxiety, but the group that took the mindfulness meditation didn't have any side effects. But how do you achieve right mindfulness? This brings us to the next step in the Eightfold Path, which is right concentration. Now, remember I told you I had gone for this Vipassana meditation. It's a 10-day retreat. There's no money to be paid. You have to observe complete silence. You can't speak to anyone. You can't make eye contact with anyone. There's no phone, no Kindle, nothing. All you do is sit and you're aware of the sensations in your body. And remember I told you the Buddha said to recognize the impermanence of things. You start concentrating and you realize this at a physical level. So for example, you're sitting and you're meditating and then you see your leg spasm with pain. But then you just stare at it without reacting and you see the pain increase, and then it subsides and then it goes away. And then you realize at a physical level that, hey, you know what? Everything is impermanent and maybe I shouldn't get so worked up. And this right concentration in that meditation setting just trains you to focus on one thing, even as your mind is chattering away with 1,000 other thoughts. And so this is what right concentration is. Right concentration is having the ability to just look at something without wandering away in focus, so that you can truly observe its true nature, which is impermanence. And that's why I found this Vipassana meditation so powerful. It wasn't about escaping my life. It was about just being a part of it and living it in a calm, anxiety-free way. Now, I'm not saying that I have totally conquered my anxiety, but by being aware of these 8 paths all at once. Now, what I want to say is that each of these steps is not like steps in a ladder. You can deploy them all at once. And will they help you defeat your anxiety forever? I don't think so. At least it hasn't for me. But it has allowed me to get a hold of it. Now, when I drop off my son at school and I come home, instead of my mind racing with thoughts about what could go wrong or what's coming next, I'm able to just take a breath, look at the fall leaves, look at birds seated on a telephone pole, listen to some classical music, and just live life in a much richer and fuller way. So I've included the link to the Vipassana meditation below. I've also included a link to this beautiful book by Mark Epstein called Advice Not Given. I hope you can check out these resources if you find them useful to you. I also hope that you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to be posting a lot about Indian mythology, about Indian history and Buddhism. So if that's the kind of thing you like, please consider subscribing for this channel. Have a great week and enjoy the next 7 days that lie ahead. Bye.